Well, you may be noticing that I'm wearing the same outfit that I was in the review for If Wishes Were Curses, and yes, I am very much aware of that. Ordinarily, I would have done some things to change my appearance, but I've finally gotten Thor to sit down and be quiet, and I'm not going to stir that sleeping little dragon right now. He has had too many negative opinions about what's been going on, and so I'm just going to go right into this review for Kitsune by Nicolette Andrews. Now, I was introduced to Nicolette Andrews' work primarily through her Dragon Saga, starting with The Priestess and the Dragon, which is currently 3 books with a 4th one on its way. Really enjoyed that, and I'll do that review at another point. But today I want to talk about Kitsune, which is actually a standalone story set within this world and before The Priestess and the Dragon. Now, it's described as a Little Mermaid retelling, and you know what? It 100% is, but it's also got a lot of its own twists to it. It follows the adventures of Ren, who is a Kitsune, whom if you've read The Priestess and the Dragon, you'll recognize her. If not, it's actually not necessary that you have read those other books. It gives you some insight into who she is or who she becomes, and in this case, it's just not necessary. It was a lot of fun to see what Ren is up to. She's one of those a little bit of a gray character. She's one of those who's very mischievous in her own way, out for herself for the most part, and we get to watch the evolution of her character as she does start to develop feelings and does start to care in a different level than before. And you know, there are many different types of retellings out there, and this is a retelling in which the author hits the beats of the main story, doesn't miss any of the important points there, but really gives it such interesting twists that you can see those elements, but it's not necessarily in the manner that you expect. For instance, the love triangle is a common aspect of the Little Mermaid story. In fact, it's one of the chief barriers to the Little Mermaid getting what she wants. And this story does have that, but not exactly in the way you expect. In fact, what really amused me was there are multiple love triangles very deftly woven throughout, and they're not angsty in such a way that it detracts from the overall narrative. It actually makes a lot of sense, and if you have read the other books set in this world, it's even more interesting and more layered because you realize what's going on. But again, if you haven't, you're okay. Just know that there is more to pretty much all of the character stories than just what we see here. The conclusion itself, it is satisfying. It's a little bit of a bittersweet ending, but the story itself, it reads very smoothly, very quickly. This is easily an afternoon read and was so much fun. I did spread it out over a couple of evenings, just reading little pieces and trying to not just race through it because I tend to read pretty quickly. And you know, all in all, the intrigues, the politics, they are very entertaining. It also incorporates a certain level of, there is much more at stake than just, will the Little Mermaid / Kitsune find true love? In fact, actually, interestingly enough, we're not even talking as much about true love in this story, which was an interesting divergence from the original fairy tale. So Ren herself, fun character. I am going to let you know that if you're not as fond of morally gray characters, you may not enjoy Ren as much. Most of the characters in this are fairly complicated. A few of them, such as Hikaru, are a little bit easier for readers who prefer completely good characters as their good guys. The actual villains in this are a little bit more nuanced. Are they really bad guys, or are they just individuals with competing interests? And so I appreciate the fact that the villainy element is not quite so pronounced. I mean, there are aspects to that, but I always had that feeling that it's more to it than what you might suspect. I mean, some of it is about vengeance. Let's not joke here. There is that undercurrent of something bad happened and I need vengeance and I'm spiteful and I'm going to get you. And that works here. But it's not just one-dimensional spite. Now, as far as the setting and the world building, this is one of the things I've really enjoyed in this, is that the stories themselves are set in sort of this uchronic medieval Japanese period. And it doesn't feature a lot of what apparently American readers are inclined to expect. Because for the most part, what I would hear when I mentioned that I was using this book was, oh, are there geishas, samurais, or ninjas? And this doesn't have any of them. That's actually That would be very different. This is focusing on a much quieter period, a much more mythical period, which I'm all for. I'm not as familiar with Japanese mythology, but I found it pretty easy to follow along and put together the pieces of this culture and the mythical beings that are present here. You sort of have this feeling that they all kind of know each other. There are relationships that stretch on for eons and eons, and there's a much richer history there than just what is understood. Now, this isn't literal Japan, to be clear. It's just based somewhat on that culture, and it is a really well-composed world in that I just feel like you can kind of wander off, and it feels like a lot of the secondary characters really could have their own individual stories. And what's humorous about that is going back to The Priestess and the Dragon, Rin is a secondary character in that, and here she is, and we get a little bit more of that backstory and such like that. So all in all, it's a satisfying story. Like I said, a little bit of a bittersweet ending, but still a good one. And a very satisfying one. I enjoyed the way that she handled the family dynamics. There is a certain conflict between a pair of brothers that is resolved in a rather fascinating way. There is, of course, the cursed parentage and all of the aspects of heritage, and then that encapsulation of the fact that the different mythical entities, deities, and such like that are not necessarily as clear-cut as good and evil. So definitely recommend, particularly if you enjoy retellings of The Little Mermaid. This is a creative one that doesn't have The Little Mermaid getting dashed into foam in the end, although I will admit there is a really cool interpretation that showcases some of the consequences of the choices. Then it is also a great read for those who do enjoy more mythical Japanese stories. And I mean, if you're just in the mood for mythical stories in general, definitely a good read. Easy to finish in an afternoon and well worth it. So I hope that you enjoy it. I would like to also mention that Okami, which is the third book in sort of this standalone series, I think that if I understand it correctly, because I've read the blurb, there's a character from this who is featured in the third book, and I'm really hoping that this is the kind of the tie-in and the wrap-up for a character who I found to be quite charming, but I don't want to say any more because I don't want to risk spoilers or inadvertently guessing it. But Okami is going live, and I think it's actually live today, February 14th, so if it's anything like Kitsune, I definitely encourage you to pick up your own copy, and I will hopefully be reviewing that one soon as well. So, have an absolutely gorgeous day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.